At long last, GRAVEN has left early access and entered 1.0. Developed by Slipgate Ironworks and published by 3D Realms and Fulqrum, a big thank you to them for providing the review code, GRAVEN is a fantasy-themed throwback shooter, taking inspiration from old-school classics like Heretic, with an emphasis on puzzles, playing your own way, and co-op with up to 8 players. GRAVEN dropped into early access back in 2021, and in my initial review, I found it enjoyable, but I certainly had my criticisms. Now though, after 3 long years of early access, this release build is certainly a more content-rich and focused experience, with plenty of things to be impressed by. However, I'm sad to say my overall experience reviewing GRAVEN was one that made me want to tear my beard hair out. Alrighty, let's get into it. Something GRAVEN has always excelled at is its visual and audio presentation. Powered by Unreal, GRAVEN goes for that modern retro look. And you know, if you're not into that style, this probably won't do much for you. But if you are, then this game is a feast of gorgeous pixelated detail. This is superpowered nostalgia at its finest. The grim art direction is fantastic. This is a blighted land and it looks the part, and the dark yet whimsical artistry kept me engaged throughout. Everywhere you go, this game feels mysterious, evil, and outright putrid. The art team really deserves a hand here, and the beautifully composed music perfectly complements. I said it in my first review, and I'll say it again, I think 3D Realms and Fulqrum should consider putting out an art of book. This is one of those games where I would love to comb over all of the concept art. The new areas are stunning. The snowy forests of Chapter 2 are lumpy with icy snow and full of gnarled trees, and it actually feels like you're going through a forest, and not a big tunnel with cardboard-looking tree textures on the side. The ruined palaces of the third hub are strikingly complex, bringing a different but cool flavor to this fantasy epic, with crumbling vistas that are a lot of fun to look at, hinting at a once grand civilization lost to time. The lighting is superb and atmospheric, and many areas in the first hub have had a lighting makeover, which I appreciated quite a bit. I did find some of the enemy animations to be a letdown though, particularly with some of the new types introduced in the second and third hubs. Their animations just look simplistic and jittery, coming across as janky and rushed. Like, is this supposed to be creepy? Because it just looks bad. Sadly, where GRAVEN greatly disappoints is in the technical side. Performance-wise, the game ran perfectly smooth, and while there was the occasional graphical bug, it wasn't enough to take me out of the experience. However, GRAVEN was lousy with crashes. In both single-player and co-op, I experienced a slew of crashes in all of my play sessions. They seemed to happen at random, however, I did discover that if I left the game on the pause menu or game over screen for a prolonged period of time, it would cause a crash. This was especially irritating for me because I take notes and write these scripts as I play the game, obviously pausing to do so. The worst of it though were the crashes that halted my progression. On 2 occasions, crashes resulted in the game soft locking. In both cases, I had a key inventory item needed to progress that would disappear after the crash and couldn't be recovered. The first time it happened, I was able to get past it with a speedrunning glitch a fellow YouTuber taught me. Shout out to Zlim. The second time, Fulqrum was gracious enough to provide me backup save game files so I didn't have to restart. A big thank you to them, but I'm disappointed it even had to come to that. Now, as of this review's upload, the developers have put out a patch to address these issues, and during my review period, Fulqrum was great about communicating with me and getting fixes out. But for me, the damage was done. I became mistrustful of the game, and as the crashes continued to occur, I became more frustrated and anxious about losing progress. And even with post-release patches going out, I'm not exactly comfortable saying, yep, the game is totally fixed now. And I think anyone diving into this within the release window should be cautious. I mean, come on, was this play tested properly? How after 3 years of early access was the game released in this state? It's unacceptable. It's a shame too, because like I said, the graphics are beautiful and polished, and the core game isn't half bad. Although, as you'll see, I definitely have my issues with that too. I really hope all of this gets fixed and that this review becomes outdated quickly. There's too much good craftsmanship in this game to let it be dragged down by technical faults. Despite the game-breaking bugs, GRAVEN is a fun game at its core, although there are some aspects to its design I dislike. When GRAVEN was first announced, it was promoted as being something of an immersive sim, which I disagreed with in my early access coverage. The game lacks the sort of player agency and exploitable systems common of those games, and wisely, GRAVEN is now billed as a puzzle shooter, which is right on the money. This is an action-heavy first-person shooter with brain teasers and some ARPG elements. Nothing more, nothing less. There is some flexibility to combat, and compared to the early builds, there's more creative options for dispatching foes, which is good, but overall, this is closer to pre-Breath of the Wild Zelda than Deus Ex, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I do think the early marketing still has some people confused as to what this game is going for. GRAVEN takes place across 3 large, non-linear, interconnected hub worlds, where the player takes on quests and side quests, bringing them into all sorts of treacherous places. The overall level design is solid. Each area brought unique challenges and plenty of nooks and crannies to explore and secrets to suss out, and the game is full of clever, time-saving shortcuts. That being said, there were plenty of times I was hopelessly confused about what to do next, and while the game's inelegant journal did have clues to help things along, I did spend a lot of time running in circles banging my head into my desk. I know GRAVEN doesn't want to hold a player's hand, and I definitely respect players that don't want their hand held, but I don't think it would have been the worst thing to provide a quest marker or compass system, made optional if the player preferred not to use them. Not helping matters is that some of the keys you collect, essential for progression, look identical to each other. Yeah, nothing like finally finding a blacksmith key after a half an hour of exploring, only to realize you need the rusty key that looks exactly like it. This sort of thing also became nerve-wracking after going through my soft lock issues. Is it a bug or just bad design? Who knows? One thing that's irksome is that there's no fast travel system. Despite shortcuts, GRAVEN is full of lengthy foot travel, often making you backtrack through the same areas over and over. Exacerbating this is that GRAVEN always starts you in the hub zone whenever you reload a save. And for a game that currently has a crashing issue, this gets very, very annoying. I shudder to think how much time I wasted just walking through empty places in this game. What was the holdup in having fast travel? Seriously, what would have been the downside? The first hub, Cruxforth, is the most developed of the 3 and features the most quests. The 2 new hubs, taking place in the Snowy Forest and Desert Ruin, don't feel quite as packed as Cruxforth, but still feature some strong level design. Although of the 2 new hubs, I preferred the third one, as it felt a bit more focused in its gameplay and lacked some of the annoying enemy types that dragged Act 2 down for me. More on that later. As mentioned, GRAVEN is full of brain teasers. Most are pretty straightforward to solve, like put the heavy thing on the pressure plate to open the door, or put the thingy in the slot to also open the door. But every once in a while you get one that will require your thinking cap and maybe some pen and paper. And while I admit a few of these puzzles had me confused to the point of annoyance, their solutions were never totally out of my grasp, and I will admit they were satisfying to solve. In terms of gameplay mechanics, GRAVEN does hit the mark. The combat feels tight all around, melee is solid, and weapons have satisfying impact. Squishing a zombie's head with your staff or sword is simple pleasure fun, and projectile weapons have that sledgehammer oomph that any shooter fan can appreciate. The slow-firing ballista can pierce multiple enemies, making zombie hordes something to be excited for. The newcomer crossbow is a solid burst-fire type with a meaty single-shot alternative. The flanchant is the medieval shotgun of my dreams, able to splatter fiends with precision. The physics system really shines with this one. The cuff arrow, while not as meaty as most weapons, can be a solid sniper type for distant headshots, although why is that scope so cloudy? And I have to shout out this evil book that feels like a meat grinder of paper. The magic system is more useful now compared to the initial versions of the game. As tools, the magic spells shine, offering ways to navigate the environment and booby-trap enemies. The fire spell can burn away wooden barriers, blow up explosive barrels and chests, as well as burn away corpse piles, where zombies spawn from. And the ice spell can create frozen walkways over bodies of water. Good stuff there. In combat, magic spells are initially non-lethal, there to weaken enemies for slick weapon combos, like stunning a baddie with shock and finishing them off with the flanchant, or burning away a warrior's shield to leave them vulnerable. As you upgrade them though, they do become deadly, with certain enemies being particularly weak to them. For me though, as I upgraded the spells, it was a little too easy to leave them on the back burner, as the weapons always felt more powerful and efficient. Like, yeah, the magic does weaken enemies, but the flanchant can also wipe them out with a few shots. Same with the ballista and peat burner. And man, is there a lot of ammo for those just lying around. And the further I got into the game and stronger my weapons got, the more I found I was just using magic for puzzles. To be fair, there are a few troublesome enemies that magic is very useful against, and it can definitely help you out against a mob. But overall, I wish more was done to nudge me to use my magic more. In regards to using magic, there's a blaring control oversight in that there's no quick swap. How in a game that encourages magic and weapon combos is there no quick swap? Like, yeah, I can hit those number keys quickly, but I'd prefer a quick tap of the E key or one of my side mouse buttons. I actually have a few other control complaints I want to throw out there. Your spell book, which holds your spells, has a dedicated key to swap between spells, which is awesome. But why wasn't this same functionality afforded to your staff and its variety of crystals, all with unique attributes? You have to always go into the inventory to swap those out. Also, why am I not able to take my spellbook and staff out of the equipment bar at the bottom of the screen? Like, if I'm in a boss battle, why don't I have the freedom to free up that space for more of my weapons? It's not a balance thing, because there's nothing keeping me from just swapping these weapons out mid-battle in my inventory menu. Also, the equipment bar itself is kinda janky. Like, if I wanted to move an item one space over, I often found it wouldn't let me, and I had no idea why. When I was having fun in Graven, I often felt like the experience was getting shot in the foot with its difficulty, which felt unbalanced regardless of what setting I played on. I know in my initial review I said Graven was on the easy side and could use more challenge, but this was an overcorrection in the wrong direction. There are some difficulty spikes that can feel really cheap. Many of the areas will hammer you with hordes of enemies, with some backhanding ambushes. The game does have a respawn system that brings you back to a checkpoint, keeping your progress, and checkpoints are ample, but in some of the tougher areas, the process of dying, respawning, and inching your way through can be pretty tiresome. Granted, this difficulty is a driver for upgrading your weapons and spells in the hub, and absolutely, the upgrades are impactful and will give you that edge. However, gold is needed for these often expensive upgrades, and a penalty for death is that you lose a certain amount of gold. So if you have a particularly bad stretch of deaths, you can find yourself in the position of having to stop down and grind for gold, either by breaking as many barrels and crates as you can find or secret hunting. And to remind, there's no fast travel system, so this can slow everything down even more, and having to walk back to the hub to upgrade is its own annoyance. Graven's enemies can also be incredibly irritating. Within the first hub, there were these flying bat things that were the bane of my existence, able to shoot out acidic AoE attacks that could cover a generous amount of ground. I never heard these things coming until they were attacking, and being in the middle of a mob of enemies and suddenly being showered with acid was the sort of thing that had me swearing up a storm. Later on, within a mysterious library, I found myself getting surrounded by vampiric enemies that would just spam devastating magic attacks that I had little defense against, and my weapons did little to stun them. Magic can certainly help in these moments, but even if I was halting an enemy's attack with electricity, chances were another one was demolishing me from the other side. The worst of it is in the second hub, where you run into some zombie enemies who, when aggroed, will sprint towards you at absurd speeds. Like, so fast and made me wonder if I had triggered some elaborate copy protection. If a group of these guys surrounded me, there was little I could do, and adding insult to injury, by the time I respawned at a checkpoint, they were already sprinting back towards me. They also don't make noise when they run, so you'll just be trotting along in the woods and get your shit rocked out of nowhere. Did you see that? Did he just magically appear? That's absurd. Backing them up are these ice creatures that quickly shoot darts that have a minuscule tail, with a freezing effect that slows you down substantially and leaves you vulnerable to the fast zombies. It's not like I was doomed forever. Once again, upgrading weapons and spells will help you overcome these dastardly fiends. But I'm not going to sit here and say that fighting these enemies was fun or rewarding. I just felt like I was dealing with cheap pests. As good as Graven's mechanics feel and as engaging its fantasy world is, there's just some design here that is plain annoying and feels untested. And I often left my play sessions feeling exhausted and grumpy. To end this review on a more positive note, I do think Graven shines in co-op. In fact, it might be fair to say that its difficulty is meant more for a co-op experience. Although me and my co-op buddy had plenty of anguishing moments against Graven's enemies. In all, it's just fun having a buddy to play with in this game, having someone there to help you figure out the mysteries and puzzles in each area. And Graven's levels are quite fun to explore, facilitating plenty of, oh wow, come over here and look at this type of moments. It's also nice to have someone there to complain to when you're utterly confused as to what to do next. One critique I have is that I wish there were co-op exclusive quests, challenges and puzzles that can only be completed with multiple players. I really like it when co-op games have that sort of thing, and I think Graven would be perfect for it. I also wonder if it would be good to have the ability to revive your partner when they die, like in most co-op games. But seeing as you can have up to 8 players in a session, perhaps this would have been bad for the balance. And yeah, 8 players can be running around these places. I haven't tried that personally, but it seems like it would be total chaos. If anybody has any experience with 8-player Graven, tell me about it in the comments. The best moments I had in Graven were in co-op, and going forward, I hope the developer puts more focus on making that experience even better. And if Graven's planned console releases ever come to fruition, I can imagine it being a fantastic split-screen experience. Hopefully by then though, it's a lot more stable and balanced. There are some strong aspects to Graven. Mechanically, it's very tight, it's co-op enjoyable, and its visuals are retro spectacular. Also, its world, while at times confusing, does have a knack for drawing you in and keeping you engaged. Unfortunately, at the moment, it's dragged down by irritating design choices, unbalanced difficulty, and severe technical issues that for me made it laborious to review. And right now, it's tough for me to recommend Graven. Now, I do like to lean towards optimism, and if Graven's developers are dedicated to building upon and improving this game, I can totally see it turning into something spectacular. And maybe in the future, I'll give it another go. This is a game I really want to like. But for now, this one just needs more time in the oven. What are your thoughts on Graven? Be sure to let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to like, subscribe, share, and smack that bell. If you want to come say hi, my Discord is linked below, along with my affiliate links. I'm Kirk, and thank you for watching this video. Stay safe out there.